Hola, buenos.
Hello. Hello, good morning all. I'm happy to welcome you to the museum. I'm Miguel Falomir. I am the director of the Museo del Prado, and I have been asked to address all of you today. I am here participating in this round table. Now, my mission, if you will, is to share with you what it is that we are doing in the museum as of the year 2017, which is when I was named director, in order to just see what the role of women is in the history of art. And we've actually done it in different ways. I would like to underscore the fact that it's relatively easy to provide a response to a specific demand, and society definitely has an interest in addressing the very important role of women, which has traditionally been dampened, the importance of women in the world of art. So trying to provide a satisfactory response to that demand by means of organizing an exhibition is something which is relatively straightforward. But I think that that in and of itself is not enough to actually address our commitment, the commitment of our museum. So I think that perhaps what most matters is time, the continuity, the reiteration of events and meetings, which is what at the end of the day guarantees a solid nature and a consistent one, and why not acknowledge a reliability to the different policies in place. So it's fair to say that in 2017 we launched a series of activities. I think that it was the right way of going about it, and it was by way of responding to one of the more important questions which were being posed, which is the question of where are the women? So in 17 we focused on Clara Peters, one of the painters who is to be seen more frequently here in the Prado Museum. And there have been a series of exhibitions which we have devoted to women artists. In 17 then, we broached Sophonisba Anguissola and Lavinia Fontana. That exhibition, I have to say, was not really very clearly understood by absolutely everyone. Some thought that by having them share an exhibition, we were diminishing their status, and that was definitely not at all what we wanted to do. What we wanted to do was explain that there were very many different ways of being a woman artist in the centuries of their times, the 16th and 17th centuries. And we wanted to address the fact that these were two models, two women who were born very close to each other, 80 kilometers at pretty well the same time, but they actually were painters, were producers in a very different ways. Sophonisba was more of an amateur, Lavinia was more of a professional who competed with her male colleagues. Back in 2020, we organized what perhaps is the most ambitious of the exhibitions that have focused on this issue, which was Invitadas. This was an exhibition that wanted to be a little bit more than an address of women as artists. The second part of the exhibition actually focused on women as artists, but it seemed to us that what was perhaps more difficult to understand was the relatively modest role that the state granted to women artists without understanding what the ideal was. Apart, of course, from a section which focused on women as patrons in the 19th and beginning of the 20th centuries. What I mean to say then is that right as of the beginning, we decided to not limit ourselves to women artists, because there are other ways of understanding the presence of women, the decisive role of women in the field of the arts, as collectors perhaps, and also, very important, the way that they themselves had been objectivized by authorities that were, for the most part, masculine. So in our endeavor to enlarge, in methodological terms, our understanding of the role of women, we've been thinking about this, and sometimes, let me backtrack, sometimes you don't see the forest because of the trees. And we thought, well, the Prado Museum has the women artists that it has. We have committed that we're going to increase that number, and I'll talk about the numbers in a little while. I think they're very telling. But the museum definitely has a superpower when addressing the issue of the role of women in the actual making of the collections. If you understand the decisive role of Isabella, the Catholic Queen, of the poor Queen Joanna of Castile, the Mad, Isabel Clarogenia, Isabel of Farnesium. Well, no other museum in the world, I think, has the presence of women acknowledged as such, not only in terms of numbers, but also in qualitative terms. I don't know whether you've seen a video which we published when we launched this itinerary. I know that they say it's a little bit trite to say that an image is worth 1,000 words. So those works that had been commissioned by women are in there. And I have to say that some of the halls, some of the more emblematic halls of the museum are pretty well naked because we've taken those works commissioned by women off the walls for this itinerary. It's really very interesting to see how and up to what point women were involved. So we're making it more visible. We're allowing for everyone to understand the very important role of women. And let me just give you some numbers. In 2017, and I'm just talking about paintings here, just paintings, there were 3 works by women hanging in our halls of 30, what? How many? How many is it? 37. 3 were hanging. Now we've gone from 37 to 80. So we've multiplied our collection by 2 and we've gone from 3 to 19. 19. Now I don't think that this is anything to be really stomping proud of. I think there's definitely a lot to do, but I also think that it's very telling of our commitment. We are engaged, as I said before. We begin in 17. It's now 2023, and there will be more. And secondly, as I say, there's tangible proof of our commitment. Now, apart from the activity, academic activity, apart from congresses and seminars and cycles and so on, which have focused on the different role of women in the field of art, I think that today we're taking a decisive step forward when we talk about key women in the creation of the Prado's collection. We definitely want to grow that in our website. This is a section which includes everything that we've done so far involving women, and you can see the relationship established between and among the women artists whom we've identified. I think that we have to tread very carefully, of course. That's understood. It's all just provisional data. There might be works, there might be women who have not yet been identified, works that perhaps were held to be anonymous or that had been erroneously attributed to a male painter, and afterwards, thanks to our research, we understand it was actually a woman painter. But yes, now we do know the women, their works, and we also have a direct reference to the organizational activities upheld so far. So conferences and so on, such as this one. All of that will be soon to be found on our website, which, as I say, is keen to be constantly refreshed. One of our aims is to ensure that we can, all of us, all of you who are specialists, well, please, we look forward to hearing from you if you have more news that we would want to include, or if you think that there's something that should be corrected, please do let us know, because I think that that will ensure that the instrument is better. It's going to be very useful, I think, forward-looking for research and dissemination and outreach purposes. So thank you very much, and let me now give the floor to Javier. I think that Javier is going to give a little bit more information about this permanent section that we are from now on going to be hosting on our website. You have the floor, my friend. Microphone, please. Microphone, please. Thank you. Javier Pantoja is going to be addressing this issue El Prado en Femenino, we would just like to give a little bit of background information. We're going to be seeing what the project actually is, what it entails, and we will see what the contents are. Yes, just give me 2 seconds. I need to access this. You know, the fact of the matter is what the director said about our desire. This is a very important ambition. This is a process which began some years ago and which has encroached other areas. Traditionally, museums were asked to address the issue of women painters in many different fields, exhibitions, the permanent collection, and so on. But the fact of the matter is, women in the history of art, well, it's much more than women as artists. So this new vision, this new approach, thinking about women as patrons, as promoters of the art, well, it's important. It's very important for the museum. We heard about this last year, and we're going to hear about it this year again over the upcoming 2 days. Women, and I'll explain about this afterwards, and I think the director also will go into it, is the museum in the world which women have most contributed to in terms of configuration and creation and establishment thereof. And it's consolidated, and the collections have also been touched by women. So it makes perfect sense, I think, to devote this time to them. Definitely our audience is very keen to learn. I think that it's a good point to explain that everything we've done, the itinerary, the congresses, everything that Noelia was describing, everything that has had to do with presentations, the labels, and how we have renamed some of the works, this decision which was taken by the museum to ensure that queens were designated as kings are designated. This decision affected the itinerary initially, but then it affects the entire museum. Of course, the documentations department where I work picks up on this, and this, which is something we began to see in the itinerary, now has come to be a fact for most of the works which are available to us via the museum's website. And apart from that, it permeates, if you will, it permeates the museum in its totality. So this interest in women, which I think is very obvious in our documentations labor, well, it's something which has affected our archives at the Museo del Prado, because what we're doing is we're giving visibility to the women, their works, how we call them, how we refer to them. This is very important. So this, for instance, has actually affected the archives, which is where this information stems from. In other words, the history of the patrons, queens and more. And this means that one of the more important promoters, Carmen Sanchez, well, we wanted her also to have a space in our archives, and she arrived at the museum to buy works, but we wanted to track her, we wanted to follow her and understand what these patrons were like. Well, we've actually opened a personal file, an archive where we have information about her. Not very much now, but hopefully forward-looking, when future generations want to do their research, they will have access to this information, just as we now have information about queens. So we are also taking good care of that endowment. So all of this information about these women will be available. Thank you for that. I apologize. We're having a little bit of a glitch here. We're having problems seeing it. I'm sorry. It's not our website. It's not the website. We're just seeing that there are some technical glitches, which I'm sure are going to be solved. So our idea then, what we've been working on is, please, could we have Chrome on screen, please? So what we want to do is publish on the museum's website, include. Aha, here we are. Yes, and I'd like to see it here too, as well. Please, thank you. I'm sorry about this. This is what happens when we're live. Okay, I will do my best. This is our website. This is the museum's website. So, as you know, our landing page includes the itinerary. And what we do is we have information regarding the different sections here. So our aim is to show, first and foremost, all of the information about the itinerary, which we've carried out over these past few months. So we have texts that provide information, the activities that have to do with the itinerary, the current symposium, and the past symposium, that's last year's symposium, and the different itineraries that have been prepared over these past few months. Now, we can also find different videos, actually, as the director hinted at before. Information about the different itineraries is available to us, and we know that different experts within the museum provided explanations. So these are professionals, these are researchers who provide updates regarding the different sections. And furthermore, there is a text, and we see that we address the different texts that have been published around this itinerary, the different sections thereof. And finally, the gallery. The gallery, these are the works that have been shown in the seminar. Our idea then has always been to make visible, if you will, on the museum's website, many of the works and ideas and artists who, for whatever reason, because of deposit-related issues or because they are actually located in a different venue, in a warehouse, for instance, were not to be visited in the museum, in the different halls in the museum. That's important. And we wanted to share with you also, I think that I can cast. Okay, I think that things are falling into place. So, El Prado and Femenino, this is the project that we will be actually inaugurating and premiering on Wednesday. You have information on artists available in that project. So the aim of that project, as the director has said, is to have on the same website include the works, include the biographies of the artists, the activities carried out by the museum, activities, itineraries, exhibitions, and it needs to be a comprehensive page that includes information regarding activities carried out by and within the museum involving women. So we're working on this now. We will be actually premiering on Wednesday, but it is, if you will, a compilation of works by the different painters, the different authors. At this point, these are the works that we have in the museum. It's actually very interesting because when we peruse the collection, I wanted to share with you other pieces of information. Most of the works that are included here by women artists, well, for the most part, it's works that date back to the past 2 or 3 years. It's also important to remember that even if the work is by a woman, by a woman painter or artist. A number of authors may actually have been included, which is why sometimes we also include secondary workers. So it could be photographs or drawings, etc. It seemed to us that it was appropriate to address the fact that women were involved, but not sacrifice the historical artistical criteria when actually putting together a collection. So we decided that we were going to include that shared authorship, if you will. Now, all of the works, of course, have information, comprehensive information, and you have access. I mean, we know who Isabella of Valois was, but perhaps our audience doesn't have that degree of expertise. So we have involved Wikipedia and Wikidata because we need to ensure that we have a link with other authors, other queens, so we know when that queen lived, and we can also see the timeline within the Prado Museum, and this has contextualized information. So we would involve architecture, painting, literature, because that gives us an idea of, in this case, we're looking at a work by Sofonisba in her portrait of Elizabeth of Valois. When she paints the work, what is going on in literary terms, what is happening in artistic terms in general. Now, furthermore, we also recommend that we visit our work of the day, our œuvre du jour. So we're running tests now, and our recommendation was to begin with Sofonisba Anguissola's Philip II. This is a way of actually understanding how she takes a look at those models of majesty. And afterwards, we also would take a look at authors whose works are currently included in the museum's collection. And we're talking here about, let me look it up, 94. And we see that we can query different biographies. Let's look up Sofonisba Anguissola again. And we see here the author in a timeline, the encyclopedia, other works by Sofonisba herself. We also include what we have called recorrido destacado, or highlighted visits. This allows any visitor to select favorite works, but preferred works. So we have included here some themes which are related to women, which, as I say, this is users. These are persons who visit the museum and who, for instance, are especially interested in Lola Blanco, women artists, and we see there's different proposals. You visit the museum, you include itineraries, and always, of course, taking into account the relationship with the author. So we did not want to limit ourselves to the official discourse on women in the Prado. We wanted to take advantage of the fact that all of this is available, and we wanted to ensure that different authors are heard and seen. Persons who are interested in these issues could also contribute. They could contribute anything that has to do with these different visits, and this will be an ongoing updating. As the director also mentioned before, we've included the different itineraries and exhibitions that have been organized over the past few years that target on women. So, El Prado en Femenino, thank you, Noelia, Invitadas, Sofonisba, Carmen Sanchez, Clara Peters, 12 artists at the Prado Museum, anything and everything that has to do with women and that has been organized over the past few years. And also the conferences, different presentations, different researchers focusing on issues related to women. In this case, as you know, the conferences are recorded and they are available on YouTube. So here you have access to all of them, and this is very useful for those researchers who want to further delve into these issues. This is good for those investigators who are researching these different women. We also include other projects. Oral memory. A couple of years ago, we celebrated our bicentennial, and we launched a project which was called Voces del Prado, Voices of the Prado. And this was a story of the Prado. So it was directors, security staff, curators, lighters, staff of the museum in general, persons who lived their lives in the museum. So we selected some of the addresses, and it's all women. It's all women employees. And it's actually very interesting, very interesting. The museum, the story that continues to be narrated. Staff of the women and researchers who have been and continue to be a part of the museum. This is a very relevant project because some of these persons are no longer directly involved with the museum, but we can hear them. We can hear their thoughts. That's very interesting. And we've also organized a number of meetings or sessions. This is the Center of Studies, the Education Department, and here a dialogue that was held years ago, actually. Museum curators and artists were the persons participating in these dialogues, thinking out loud about the works that the museum houses. As you can see, it's a very interesting, very ambitious website. I think it definitely merits a visit, and all of the activities that have to do with women, artists with works that have to do with women. I think that the most recent one, of course, is this current symposium, this cycle of conferences that is taking place now, March 6 and 7. And then other projects, educational projects, the cycle of conferences. And finally, there are some issues pending from the point of view of contents. We talk about resources, what we've done over the past few years, what we've focused on, because here we're talking about different exhibitions. So again, Clara Peters, that was a very interesting interactive session. The work of women in the Prado Museum, that was educational, and then the genealogy, that had already been done, and what we've done is we've updated that, and I think that the final update is about to be completed in a very brief time. I'm not going to give anything away here, but it was very interesting. What we wanted to do was calling a woman by her husband's name. If the woman was a queen of Spain or the governor of the Netherlands or somebody who actually was powerful in her own right, but it was always wife of Philip II. You see, so this new genealogy, this new nomenclature is being worked out also. And also you'll see the works included in the itinerary, and this was just hinted at by the director, the misnamed Joanna the Mad, Joanna I of Castile. Well, we're going to delete that in the Prado Museum, and we will include that in the labels and so on, but it's faster on the website, so that the Mad will be done away with. We are just going to call her Queen of Spain, which is at the end of the day what she was. We hear applause. And finally, the grants and the awards, we have a study center. So everything and anything that has to do with gender, everything that has to do with women, that also is included here on this website. So what we're trying to do is focus on our website, add layers to it, focus on the works, focus on the museum's activities, focus on women, and of course also focus on research activities, curatorship, documentaries, investigation of the role of women in the Prado Museum now and at different points of times, and we are trying to group all of this together. This is a work in progress, and yes, we will be premiering on Wednesday, but as the director said, I certainly am absolutely convinced that we're just going to be adding more and more layers of interest. The next section will be the role of women, as we hear in this itinerary, not only as an artist or as represented, but also as promoter of the museum, commissioner of works, patron of the arts. So thank you very much for your attention. I do apologize for the glitch. We had really rehearsed this many times, but thank you for your understanding.
Pues vamos a ver una de estas actividades que es concretamente la que nos ha convocado de aquí, que es el itinerario.
This is the activity that we're going to hold now. It is the itinerary of El Prado en femenino. I'm going to give the floor to the director. I'm afraid to do so. Oh yeah, I know it should work, yes, but just in case. I'm scared. Good morning. Again, it gives me great pleasure to present today the itinerary El Prado en Femenino, artistic promoters of the museum's collection 1451 to 1633. I would like to begin this brief presentation by thanking Miguel Falomir and the National Museum of the Prado on his behalf for the trust they have placed in me to carry out this project, which aims to make visible the outstanding work that the women in the royal houses have played in the formation of their collections. The entire whole museum has collaborated closely, from communication to editing, visitor services. Many departments have contributed to making the Prado en Femenino to become a reality. To all of them, my deepest gratitude. I insist, it is a privilege for me to work with the Prado Museum team. This project aims to contribute to the social challenge, which is achieving gender equal opportunities as set out in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. That is why I find it very important, and I feel very grateful that it was the Women's Institute, supported by the Ministry of Equality, the sponsor that has financed this meeting, whose objectives are aligned with the fifth of the Sustainable Development Goals, focused on achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls. The itinerary we are presenting today, as the director has explained, is part of a broader project that began last spring with the holding of the first edition of the Protagonistas Femeninas Symposium that finds its continuity in the second edition that brings us together these days. This first symposium constitutes the theoretical framework that supports the itinerary we present today, whose content is complemented by the publication of the book that you can see on the screens and 3 documentary videos linked to the exhibition proposal, which you can access from the website of the Prado Museum and the YouTube channel. The creation of these videos is an audiovisual resource of great value for the transfer of knowledge and scientific dissemination. Both the guidebook as well as the documentaries, in both of them, we've had the involvement of curators of this institution and researchers from national and international academic circles. My sincere thanks to all of them. So what does this proposal we're presenting to you today consist of? Why is it that the Prado Museum is the ideal place to carry it out? The Prado Museum has two peculiarities that make it the perfect model for exploring, recovering, and disseminating the promotion of women's art. The first one concerns the creation and consolidation of the museum as an institution. The second one concerns the formation of its collections. As for the former, the fact that its founder was a woman, Isabel de Braganza, has long gone unnoticed. But how many museums prior to the 20th century and the beginning of the great American collections have been promoted by a female initiative? The Prado Museum is no doubt an exception. As exceptional was the role played by Isabella II, who, upon the death of her father, Ferdinand VII, financially compensated her mother and sister to keep together the works that made up the Royal Museum of Painting. We wouldn't have this museum without her intervention. The second peculiarity refers us to the direct link between the formation of the museum's collections and the women of the royal houses. As the director, Miguel Falomir, has pointed out, the Prado is probably the European museum in which women have been most decisive in its configuration, either by contributing decisively to its foundation and preservation, as we just mentioned with Isabel de Braganza and Isabel II, Elizabeth, or as promoters, works such as Van der Weyden's The Descent from the Cross, Titian's Charles V at the Battle of Mühlberg, Dürer's Adam and Eve, and so many others would not be part of the Prado's collection without their decisive role. However, we often walk through the halls of the museum without noticing that some of its most emblematic and significant works are the result of a female patronage. But beyond the remarkable number, the importance of the pieces in question is striking. Absolute masterpieces in the history of art were acquired by women who excelled in patronage, but also in the promotion of the artists who worked in their service. One of the most representative examples in this sense is one of the protagonists of this itinerary, Isabel Clara Eugenia. The Prado Museum houses dozens of works derived directly from her patronage. Not to mention that the close link of this museum with the production of Rubens is especially linked to the promotion and dissemination task that the governor of the Netherlands made of the career of this artist, who arrived at the Spanish court in 1628, sent by Elizabeth Clara Eugenia, and who became one of the favorite painters of Philip IV, which is the reason why the Prado is a museum in the world that treasures most works by the Flemish painter. This is a very illustrative fact of the specific weight that the artistic promoters have played in the formation of the collections of El Prado. In order to explain who were those women, the work they did, and how they are linked to the museum's collections, the itinerary El Prado en Femenino offers visitors a selection of devotional works, mythological scenes, and portraits of clear political intent that will allow them to learn more about the most prominent artistic promoters of a period that begins with the birth of Isabella the Catholic and ends with the death of Isabella Clara Eugenia. Within this time frame, which extends from 1451 and 1633, queens, regents, princesses, governors such as Mary of Hungary, Joan of Austria, Isabella of Valois, Catherine of Austria, all of them promoters of artistic works and women of the highest culture. These women, our protagonists, played a fundamental role not only in the field of the promotion of works of art, but also on the main stages of power. Women who were responsible to a great extent for the internationalization of the Hispanic monarchy. This is evident when you see rooms, or halls rather, 55 and 56 of the museum, which show a map such as this one, where you can see the expansion of Europe, of this political entity, thanks to the marriage pacts that began as a result of the foreign policy of the royal instance. In fact, the European projection of the Hispanic kingdom comes from the hand of these women who came from abroad to marry the Spanish monarchs or they travel to formalize their engagement with the kings or princesses of the European dynasties, as did the daughters of the Catholic monarchs and the main representatives of the House of Austria, and so on. This matrimonial alliance has generated a network of personal and power relationships, but also patronage and female artistic agency with important repercussions in terms of the exchange of works and the promotion of artists. The artistic patronage these women undertook and their close ties of the formation of these collections of the Prado will be the protagonist of this itinerary entitled El Prado en Femenino, a tour consisting of 32 works distributed in 10 halls and grouped around 3 sections. The first of these sectors, artistic promoters in the Prado Museum, brings us closer to the main portraits of these queens, regents, and governors. The portraits of Elizabeth I to Elizabeth Clara Eugenia will show us that there's many others: Catalina Micaela, Leonor, Maria of Austria, Isabel Clara Eugenia, Joan of Austria, Maria of Austria, Elizabeth, Margaret of Austria, and the last 2 ones, which are Anna of Austria and Isabel de Valois. All of these women will show us the solution, iconographic solutions and resource strategies used by women to construct and promote their public image, something that Professor Elie Woodbaker was talking about in her lecture. And it will also talk about the mechanisms of female legitimization in the exercise of power. These images will allow us to explore the uses and functions assigned to these works, directing our attention to devotional issues, affections, political ambition, personal glory. Portraits that will not only help us analyze the construction of their image, but also their aspect in the field of artistic promotion. So when we see these halls, we're going to be able to see the evolution of treasure to artistic collection evolution, the relationship between these power networks, patronage networks, women who promote works of artist women, such as the case of Elizabeth de Valois and Elizabeth Juan Bisola, but also maybe not so well-known cases such as Isabel de Tudor and Maria Kervin. So it is a great opportunity to be able to discover and treat cross-cutting issues which are key for the history of patronage in the modern history. The second of these sections is dedicated to Mary of Hungary, probably the most astute of the members of her generation of the House of Austria in terms of her relationship with the arts, not only as the main figure responsible for the construction of the imperial image of Emperor Charles V, but also as an skilled strategist in the instrumentalization of art in the service of the political interest. The selection of devotional works, mythological scenes, and portraits of clear political intentionality included in this section will show many portraits, as you can see, that are the second section of the itinerary. Mary of Hungary was one of the main promoters of this period, and I'm just going to give you a piece of information. The name of the prestige of Titian, as you know, is commonly associated to the figures of Charles V and Philip II. But, as Miguel Falomir has explained, it was Maria of Hungary who, in less than a decade since she coincided with the artist in the Tide of Habsburg, became the main owner of works by the Venetian painter. The ruler of the Netherlands managed to surpass not only the Italian patrons, but also her brother Charles V and her nephew Philip II. Finally, the third section is devoted to Isabella Clara Eugenia, who is linked to the collections of the Museum Prado from a triple meaning as the firstborn of Philip II and a fundamental piece in the chain of dynastic succession, and an artistic mediator between Spain and Flanders during the years of her government in the Flemish lands. This itinerary will allow us to approach 3 different but complementary aspects of the patronage exercised by Isabella Clara Eugenia that closely relate her to the collections of the Prado Museum: the construction and evolution of her public image, The artistic promotion developed under her government in the Netherlands, together with her husband, Archduke Albert of Austria, and her work as an artistic mediator, especially with regard to the dissemination of Rubens' art in Spain. In this regard, I would like to insist on the last aspect and recall how important she was for the formation of the results, and the fact that she was the person responsible for the fact that Philip IV directed his gaze to Rubens, so that we have many works by him. The Prado en Femenino gives visitors the opportunity to contemplate the works of this collection in a different way, with a different look. In addition, the creation of this itinerary allows visitors to enjoy some of the works that until now remained in the museum's storerooms, such as the portraits of Elizabeth, Clara Eugenia, and Albert of Austria, but also John Frederick of Saxony by Titian, Elizabeth of Valois, Anne of Austria, the bust of Mary of Hungary, and at the same time, Jas Dubrecht's bust of Eleanor of Austria, which is going to be exhibited in Hall 56. Finally, I think it deserves special attention to highlight the museum's willingness to review this narrative discourse, modifying the titles and explanatory text of some of the labels that accompany the works to present a current story telling in keeping with the spirit of the society of the 21st century. In this discourse, women have ceased to be titled as wives of. Ana and Javier talked about this, to occupy a place of their own. This is important. An example of this is the case of Mary Tudor, the first queen owner of England, who nevertheless appeared as the second wife of Philip II. This fact is important, obviously, and it is therefore included in the body of this label, but not in the title of the work. This is the prior and this is the current label that you can see next to the portrait of the Queen Mary Tudor. Likewise, the abbreviation has led the museum to use a more precise terminology, differentiating between the owner queens and queen consorts. While the queen consorts appear as the queen, followed by her name, as you can see on the screen, with the example of the portrait of Isabella de Valois, the queen. In the case of property queens, or proprietary queens rather, owner queens, we find their name followed by the title they hold, Mary I, Queen of England. The application of this criteria, which has begun with El Prado en Femenino, as Ana said, will be extended little by little to the entire museum collection, a revision that will offer very significant and necessary changes. As Javier said, we're going to stop using the derogatory adjective, the Joan the Mad, to refer to her as Joanna, the first Queen of Castile. As an art historian, as a specialist in the study of female patronage and as a woman, it is a great satisfaction for me to see the Prado Museum determination to make visible the outstanding role that women have played in history of art, inviting us with El Prado en Femenino to explore new narratives, to get to know stories as original and surprising, where women are protagonists in their own right, as in the case we are dealing here. The case of the artistic promoters, the patrons of the art, the women who promoted the Prado Museum and contributed mightily to the formation of its collection. Does anybody want to make any comment or remarks, with the exception of criticisms about the technical issues that we've had, which obviously we cannot do anything about it now? But as for the rest, we will be obviously willing to answer you if you have any questions or doubts. Oh, I'm so happy there's no questions. Well, if that is the case, we go into action. And we're going to do the itinerary visit now. Thank you very much.